The American Institute for Stress has done some surveys, and their studies have revealed several interesting findings. You might find yourself in one of these categories. If you had been surveyed, you may have agreed with these results. 77% of people regularly experience physical symptoms caused by stress. Some would say, well, money is a stress. 76% of the people said money is a stressor, and they worry about money. 48% say they lie awake at night, worried about something. Businesses and companies across America have said they spend a total of $300 billion, billion dollars to help people with the idea of stress and pressure that's experienced with worry. 54% say they have stress that has happened because of a relationship issue somewhere in their life with a friend or a family member, somebody that is causing them all kinds of stress. Pam and I went to Sam's Wholesale Club yesterday. If you've been to Sam's, say yes. Good place to go. Some of you Costco people, I'm a Sam's kind of guy. And so we went over to Sam's, and while she was there at the automatic checkout where you kind of check, the items for yourself, she was there, and there was another family over at another register here, not far. We were close to where they were. And there was a little boy, I'm guessing he was 4 years old, just big enough to kind of push a cart. The cart was now empty, so it was just the weight of the cart. And he got hold of it and just kind of pushed it just a little bit. And poof, it banged into the cash register counter over there, and And I thought his family was going to cloud up and rain on him. And my grandpa instinct kicked in, and my little kid awareness kicked in, and I thought, Batman to the rescue. And I went over there, and I said, wow, you are so awesome. Look at you, so strong, you can push a cart. Man, he wheels around. He's got a lollipop in this hand that I hadn't seen before, so there's my next part of the conversation. Look at your lollipop. Man, I wish I had a lollipop. You are so lucky to have a lollipop. And then I look up at the big folks, and I said, isn't it something how fast they grow? Good grief, can't believe it. He'll be graduating from kindergarten pretty soon. He'll be getting out of high school pretty soon. Yeah, and then they start telling me about their niece and nephew that are going to be graduating from high school. Crisis averted for little men. He was making it. And I said this to them, and I say this to you. Quit stressing over the small stuff, little stuff. Get over it. Let go of some of the petty, goofy, stupid stuff, silly stuff you're stressing about that you can't do anything about and sometimes shouldn't do anything about. But sometimes there are bigger things. Sometimes there are things that really are dominant. And sometimes when we see them, we are like, And the disciples were seeing some things that were causing them to go, And as they saw these things, they looked at them and they're saying, oh man, Jesus has healed Lazarus. We've already read that in John. Jesus has already been teaching them, and he's talking to them about the Holy Spirit coming. He's talking to them about his death. He's talking to them about future things that are ahead. And we're talking about matters of the heart. So when we're thinking about matters of the heart, we're today thinking about what they're experiencing because they are having some stress. And we're talking about a troubled heart. When Jesus would be on the cross, by the time he got there, all of the disciples have fled. Some have forsaken him. Judas has hanged himself. This is not a real good scene. Their hearts are really troubled. But Jesus is talking to them prior to that, and he gives to them some insights that could help us today as we're dealing with and living out life in the everyday reality. And he starts talking to them about a troubled heart. Now, this is a passage we revisit every other year or so because it is so full of so much theology, so much hope, so much insight, so much Jesus, that we want to come back and squeeze it one more time and just learn something else and have something else speak to us because he always says something when we come look at him in this passage. Notice in verse 1 of your passage right there, Jesus understands your troubled heart. Jesus understands your troubled heart. Your psychiatrist, your doctor, your psychologist, your pastor, your counselor may understand your troubled heart. Your spouse may understand your troubled heart. But did you see what we just sang there? Jesus understands your troubled heart. We're talking the Creator. We're talking the Savior. We're talking the one who knows you best. He understands your troubled heart. Many things can make us anxious. Worry magnifies a situation. It weighs us down. The unanswered questions mount up, and their question mark at the end of the sentence is in bold font, big print, saying, "Whoa!" And it steals our joy, and it takes away our ability to move ahead in situations. These disciples are worried here. They're wondering if God is really attentive to what's going on with them. They're wondering if God in this moment is able to help them, because all the things Jesus is saying to them is like, he's out of here, he's dying. And it's like, man, this is getting pretty grim. This is getting pretty dark. What's going on? But look what he says in verse 1 and verse 27. John chapter 14, verse 1, notice what Jesus says. Do not let your heart be troubled. Go down to verse 27. Drop down there. Look at what he says. Do not let your heart be troubled. He understands something about what's going on with the trouble that is mounting up within your life. Robert Morris has written the book, The Blessed Life. He also teaches that material. And we have shown his video that teaches us on generosity, as we've shown a couple of times and probably will down the line again. It's just such great teaching, and he helps us out so much. But he had, if you've heard his testimony in the last year or so, he had a near-death experience. He went in for an ordinary surgery. I want to ask you a question with no condemnation to those in the medical field. I'm going to ask you the question with my glasses down just a little. I can ask it better. Is there anything like an ordinary surgery? No. When it's you, not ordinary. They went in and did this ordinary surgery. He was in recovery. He and his wife live in the city, in the Metroplex, and decided they would go out to the outskirts and stay in a cabin that they had, and they would go out there and chill and recover. Good idea. He didn't have to preach or worry about church matters. He was able just to focus on healing, and he and his wife to have a good time together. And so they were out there. But one day he was feeling off, really woozy. He hadn't been there long. And he was feeling so bad he had to sit down. He said, I don't know what's wrong. Before he knows it, they've got him on a helicopter, life flighting him to the hospital. He says goodbye to his wife, who's going to take the car, and she's going to drive to the hospital, meet him there. Scary time, unsettled time. He gets to the hospital and they say, wow, let's check out what's going on. They don't know what's going on. Pretty soon they figure out what is going on. When they did the ordinary surgery, they nicked an artery and didn't know it. So they went in and put some duct tape on it, a little baling wire, got him tuned back up, filled him up with some WD-40 and sent him home. Pretty much what happened. A few days later, he's having the same symptoms, wasn't feeling good, and was thinking, what in the world? Took him back to the hospital. He had had an ordinary surgery, duct tape put on the artery. He said, what's wrong? They started checking him out, exploring him, and you know what happened? They said, well, when they did the surgery on you, they didn't nick you in one place. They nicked you in another place, and you were bleeding to death all over again. I tell you that very dramatic story because there is another dramatic part that you want to know. Let not your heart be troubled. Let's say it together. Let not your heart be troubled. And here's the incredible and important thing that he was learning. When they took him onto that helicopter for the life flight, we know the grief his wife would experience if she thinks, I may not see him again. We know that. But what is it from the other person that's on the gurney? What are they thinking? And here's what he thought. I'm dying. I'm leaving my family. Listen to this. You may need this. He said, a peace was over me. I'll see them all in just a little while. They will be with me soon. His son said to him, you just touched eternity. Let me say this to you. Let not your heart be troubled. Jesus knows what's going on. Look at another thought here. Jesus says this, trust him with the answer of your troubled heart. God's compassion will not stop the troubles from happening. His compassion and love for us will not stop some of the troubles that happen to us. They will happen. He loved Joseph immensely. He loved Joseph intentionally. He loved Joseph with significant purpose. But Joseph was sold off by his brothers, hated by them. Joseph, you know the story, was then a slave. Then he was a servant. Then he was accused falsely. Then he was imprisoned. Then he was forgotten. And finally, probably about 17, 20 years later, he is remembered in a key moment. Let me just say this to you. God's compassion will not stop his will from happening. Our cousin, Dr. Terry McCarthy, and her husband, Dr. Darrell McCarthy, they serve as professors in Europe. And this one particular professorship where she was for a while teaching, she was in a part of Europe, and I'm not going to say where. The internet goes around the world, but she was in a part of Europe. And she was teaching a class that was filled with Muslim students. She could not mention the name of Jesus in the class. That would be forbidden. Outside of class, she could do what she wanted, but in the class, she could not talk about Jesus. She's up here giving a lecture on English and talking about English. And as she gives this lecture, there is a student who midway back in the middle of the room stands up to his feet and says, Muhammad is greater than Jesus. She wants to ignore it. She says, okay. She moves right on with her lecture. He stays standing, once again, loud voice in the room, points his finger and says, Muhammad is greater than Jesus. You say it, he said to her. There she was. What to do? Foreign country. Class doesn't know if her head will get, doesn't know if she'll be killed, doesn't know what will happen. She says, you know, I can't say that. And then she did what any of us would do. She sent up a prayer to God. SOS. Help! Let not your heart be troubled. She said, I want to ask you a question. Wisdom in the moment. God on the spot. Let not your heart be troubled. I want to ask you a question. Do you have a grandmother? She knew from her study that that culture especially valued older people. Ours needs to as well. But that culture really, really highly esteems older people as very much so to be revered. And he said, yes, you know I have a grandmother. She's dead, but what's that have to do with anything? You say Muhammad is greater than Jesus. She says, you know, if I say what you want me to say, it would break my grandmother's heart. I can't say what you want me to say. And she didn't know what would happen after that. An old Muslim guy taking the class raised his hand and said, could I say something? May I go to the marker board? Gets up, goes to the marker board, and there begins to scrawl out, Muhammad is a prophet. And then takes his pen, and under that says, Muhammad said, Jesus is a prophet. And then turned to the class and said, it's okay if this lady believes in Jesus. Let not your heart be troubled. They're having trouble with codfish staying fresh years ago. They were trying to ship it from Boston over to San Francisco to put it on the tables of the restaurants and in people's homes, but they were having no real success. They would kill it, they would prepare it, they would put it on ice and ship it across, but nothing good was happening with that. We'd get there and it would taste mushy, yucky, gross. Who would want it anyway? But some people wanted it. So they thought what to do, and they decided they would send it now alive in tanks filled with water and just go slow boat across the United States, if you will, or take it around, and they would get it there that way. But when they got there, the fish from all of the jostling and all of the travel still tasted very gross. What to do? What would you have done? Some of you are smart and would have come up with a great invention. Somebody smart like you did come up with an invention and said, guess what? Catfish love to eat cod. Cod are scared of catfish. How about in that tank when we ship them live with that water, we put a couple of catfish in there and they will make the cod swim around. They'll stay strong and fresh. And by the time they get over in San Francisco, they'll be able to take them out as fresh fish, take care of, prepare, and put them on the tables of the people. And when they did, the people said, send us more. God's will not keep us from experiencing things that confuse us. His plan will not cause us to avoid a troubled heart. But he said he will go with us through the situation. Chip Ingram puts it this way: God's agenda is not to make you happy. His agenda is to make you holy. Martin Luther King Jr., on the eve before he would be killed, said to the people, as I studied his speeches, and he came up with a phenomenal speech. He said, I've been to the mountain and I've seen, and he draws that scene out, I've seen the other side. What was he saying? In this world I'm having trouble. This stinks. But there's a better day coming. There's hope on the other side. There's God, there's victory, there's life. We're going to have a heartbeat over there. This is going to happen. Jesus puts it this way: you believe in God? Yeah, we believe in God. You can hear them say. Believe also in me. What I'm telling you, the cross. What I'm telling you, I'm going to send you the Comforter. What I'm telling you about the resurrection, all of this. He says you can believe in that. Look at verse 7, John 14. If you really know me, you will know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him and have seen him. So what's Jesus really saying? Here's what he's saying. Trust me. I'm aware. Trust me. I have your back. Trust me. I'm not surprised. Trust me. I can handle this. When I grew up in my family, I was the youngest of 4. Kathy's 12 years older. Lance about 10 years older. Nancy's 4 years older than me. I don't even know why they had me. Just, well, there he is. Okay. And so here I am. My dad and mom sometimes would say to the family, let's get in the car and we'd go out and drive all over the place. Did you ever take Sunday afternoon drives? We did. I hate them. We'd take Sunday afternoon drives, and he would tell us Aunt so-and-so lived there and Uncle so-and-so that we never met. They were people that meant something to him, meant nothing to us. We're on some dirty, dusty country road with the windows down, sweating and dying. And my dad doesn't care. He just looking at these old places, reminiscing and all of that. But sometimes we would get to take a bike ride. Well, here I am about 4 or 5 years old. I can't keep up on my little bike with them on their travels. They're fast. They're big. They've all got the big bikes. This was back in the time when they were still inventing fire. The wheel had just been invented. It was a long time ago. They didn't have the little carriage that could come pulled behind the bike, right? They don't have the seats that can sit above the back tire on the bike, so you can just drive down in style and be cool. None of that kind of stuff existed then. It was still in the days that were early. The sun had just dawned. And so they'd say, so my dad would say to me, he had a big bike. And it had it was a boy's bike. It had the bar going across here, but it had this extra little thing built on it. I don't know what it is, but it had this extra little thing built on, just decorative. You can still buy a bike like that today, but they're old kinds, it's retro. You can get one with that little, and then he would say to me, boy, go get a pillow out of the living room. So I'd run into the house, and there'd be one on the couch, and I'd come running back out. He'd say, here, put it on the bar. He'd put it on the bar, and he'd grab me, pick me up, and he'd sit me right on that bar. I can still get that feeling just coming right up in here, because it was an unusual feeling that happened when we took bike rides. And it was like, an early form of child abuse. I did not appreciate it very much. It was not really helpful to me at all in my growing experience. But I guess until now, for an illustration, maybe that's the purpose, so God bless him. I sat on that pillow straddling that bar. Man, Tim Hawkins could make hay out of that. I would grab hold of the steering wheel then, and he would say, put one foot on the top of the fork where it came out about that far, and another foot on the other side on top of the fork, and hold on to the handlebars, and you just stay right there, boy. And so off we would go. Now, our town had, for the most part, it was pretty flat. You could ride bikes, and my family would take bike rides, not like Glenn Chamberlain, a 600-mile ride, no. But as a little kid riding on a bar, it might as well have been, because it's going to take me 4 or 5, 6 miles. It's a long trip. There I sat. You feel sorry for me, don't you? And there I sat, yes. And so I'm sitting on this. I'm still learning the Bible verses. I don't know, let not your heart be troubled yet. Neither let it be afraid. But there I sat. And then we went up by the J.C. Shelter House. They just built it. It was a new park. And later on, I would play a lot of baseball there. Kept me out of a lot of trouble. I would play a lot of football there. Kept me out of a lot of trouble. I would meet up with my friends. We'd hang out, and there were family picnics at the J.C. Shelter House. Hey, we had picnics back in the day, and it was fun. And I had a lot of good memories there, but I also had this bicycle memory there, because what happened is, as soon as we got up by the park, we would turn, and now we would go down. We had a few hills in our town, and we had one that if you had been at the end of the block and looked back up, it'd probably be about the height of that ceiling over there to the floor over here. So you've got this, and now it's about a block long. I'm going to have to take this ride on this bar, holding on to the seat, and my dad would say to me, hold on tight, boy. And then he would say, because I would feel as we turned, he would slow down a second to make sure I was all right. I know, I could still feel it. It happened. With this elbow, he would lean in right in here. And with this elbow, he would lean in right over here. And my dad wasn't a real tender man early on in his life, I don't think. He was at the old days, but not in the young days. And he would then get very tender with me, and he would say, I've got you, Kev. Let not your heart be troubled. God has his elbow in you here on one side, his elbow in you on this side. He knows where you are. He knows about the ride. He may not remove the experience, but he'll be with you through the experience. Can I get a witness in the house? Let's say it together. Let not your heart be troubled. Let's say it again. Let not your heart be troubled. One more time like you mean it, and your neighbor can hear you like they believe it too. Let's say it. Ready? Let not your heart be troubled. Father, we give you thanks for this day, your word, your lamp, your light. Your ways are not our ways. You have a different thought, and you know how to lead us. So we surrender ourselves to you and say, here we are. We want to be your people. We want to do your will. So, Lord, we join with the disciples in saying, man, this is an interesting ride sometimes, and we're not exactly sure what's going on. But you know what's happening. You know what's happening. And so you say to us, let not your heart be troubled. Today I pray for the father and for the mother. I pray for that couple that is hurting, scars and bruises that are just ouching so bad. I pray for that son or that daughter. I pray for that grandparent that is very lonely and missing. And God, some of us sit among the ashes of shattered pots like Job, And from there, we scrape the boils of our experiences. And we want you. We need you. Our heart can barely get out a whimper, but we're saying, let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. Jesus, we believe. Today, open your arms and hold us close. Let us feel your elbows digging in and speak our name and just remind us you've got us. Be with the brokenhearted today. Be with those that are mending. Remember us, Jesus, because with you all things are possible. Without you, we are chopped liver. We're done. We're done. But in the powerful moment of your presence right here today, I feel you're doing something great. So be pleased to honor your name. Honor your name. We say yes to you. We say yes to you. Lead us, Lord. Guide us. For your honor and glory. Thank you. Let's say it in a softer voice now. Let not your heart be troubled. Ready? Let's say it together. Let not your heart be troubled. One more time. Let not your heart be troubled. Last time. Let not your heart be troubled.